The order to surrender Earth arrived, stamped with a seal older than most of the stars the Orel Concordance had ever claimed. Speaker of Precedence Halan Vey read it twice from the bridge of his flagship, and he made the 200,000 minds of his armada wait while he did. He was an old creature, gray at the crest, slow in the joints, and he had spent 400 years learning the one law that held the whole concordance together. The oldest claim rules. The first to stand on a world owned it. The first to fly a hull commanded the ones built after. Age was not respect in the concordance. Age was law, written and enforced, and the longer a thing had existed, the more it was allowed to take. By that law, Earth owned nothing. Earth was new. Halan Vey had the records in front of him. Humanity had crossed into the wider dark only 6,000 years ago. By concordance reckoning, that made them children, latecomers, a species that had arrived after the furniture was already arranged. They held a handful of thin colonies. They flew ships that looked like patched freight haulers, with a gun bolted on for courage. For 6,000 years they had paid their precedence teeth on time, bowed when older fleets passed, and never once raised their voice in the great halls where seniority was argued. So when the concordance decided it wanted Earth's whole region for a breeding reserve, no one expected trouble. You did not ask a child for its room. You simply told it to leave. Send the demand again, Vey said. Plain language. No older species should have to read a thing twice. The demand went out across 40 light-years on every band humanity used. Vacate the home system within one rotation. Surrender all hulls. Accept relocation to a holding belt under concordance management. The penalty for refusal was listed at the bottom in small, board script, the way you list a thing you are certain you will never need. The penalty was total erasure. Vey settled his old bones into the command cradle and watched the human world turn, blue and slow and unaware, on the great screen. Around him stretched the largest fleet the concordance had assembled in 900 years. 31,000 warships, hulls grown over centuries, layered with the captured technology of 200 conquered peoples, ringed with weapons that had ended civilizations older than the human species itself. It was not a fleet sent to fight. It was a fleet sent so that fighting would never be considered. The point of overwhelming numbers was that no sane mind looked at them and chose anything but the knee. He expected the knee. He had built his entire life around the certainty of it. What he got, 11 hours later, was a single human voice on an open channel, calm and unhurried, speaking to 31,000 warships as though it had all the time in the world. This is Captain Edrin Cole, of the human vessel Long Patience, the voice said. We received your demand. We would like to make a counteroffer. On the bridge of the flagship, a junior reader trilled in disbelief. A counteroffer. From a species 6,000 years old, to a fleet that outnumbered every ship humanity had ever built by a factor no one had bothered to calculate. Halan Vey did not laugh. He had not survived 400 years by laughing at things he had not yet measured, but he allowed himself a slow, dry curl of the crest that passed, among his people, for amusement. Let the child speak, he said. Let us hear what the young ones think they have to bargain with. He should have been listening more carefully to the name of the ship. Long Patience. It was an odd name for a freighter with a gun. It was the name of a thing that had been waiting a very long while for someone to make exactly this mistake. Captain Edrin Cole was 49 years old, and he had spent 30 of those years training for a conversation he had prayed he would never have to start. He stood on the bridge of the Long Patience, which from the outside looked like every other tired human hull in the system, and he keyed the channel and spoke slowly, because the thing he was about to do could not be undone, and he wanted to be sure. Our counteroffer is simple, Cole said. Withdraw. Go home. Forget the coordinates of this system. Do that. And no one has to learn what we kept buried out here. That is the whole of it. That is the kindest thing we have ever offered anyone." A long pause crossed the 40 light years. Then Halan Vey's voice came back, gentle, almost fond, the voice an elder uses on a hatchling who has said something charming and wrong. "Young one," the speaker said, "you have 900 hulls in this entire region. We can see all of them. We have counted them twice. You have nothing buried out here but your own dead. I am old, and I am patient, and I will give you one more rotation to put down your guns. After that, there is no offer left to make." Cole closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his voice had not changed at all. "You counted the hulls we let you count," he said. "Speaker, I am going to tell you the truth now, because you are old, and the old deserve the truth before the end. Humanity is not 6,000 years old. The ships we fly in front of you are not what we have. We have been small on purpose. We have bowed on purpose. We have paid your tithe on purpose, for 6,000 years, so that no fleet would ever come out here curious. We were hiding something." "And what," Vey said, indulgent, "were you hiding?" Edrin Cole looked at the deck plating under his boots, which was older than the RL Concordance, older than the Law of Precedence, older than the first hull the Gray Speaker's people had ever floated. "Warships," he said quietly. "Warships older than your empire, older than every empire out here. We did not build them. We found them, a long time ago, and we learned what they were, and we have been keeping them asleep and keeping you away from them ever since, because we knew what you would become if you found them first." He let the silence stretch. "You are about to make us wake them up," Cole said. "I am asking you, as the only mercy I am permitted to offer, not to make me do that. Withdraw, please." The channel held open and empty for a long while. On the flagship, the Gray Speaker turned the words over the way he turned over everything, slowly, looking for the weight of them. He had heard a great many bluffs in 4 centuries. The small and the cornered always claimed a hidden strength, a buried weapon, a secret ally, an old debt about to be called in. It was the oldest reflex of the weak, and he had watched it fail 200 times. He had no reason to think the human was any different. The records were the records. Humanity was 6,000 years old. There were no ships out here but the patched and tired hulls his scouts had already counted. And yet, he had not lived 400 years by ignoring the small wrong notes. The human captain had not raised his voice. He had not boasted. He had said please, which was not a word a bluffing creature reached for, and the name of his ship sat in Vey's mind like a stone he could not stop touching. Long patience. You did not name a freighter that, you named a thing that, after waiting a very long time. "What do you mean?" Vey said at last, and for the first time in the exchange, a thread of something careful had entered his old voice, older than my empire. "I mean exactly that," Cole answered. "The Oral Concordance is, by your own records, 11,000 years old. The oldest hull you fly was laid down 9,000 years ago, and you treat it like a relic, like a holy thing, and rightly so. I have stood inside it. I have read your histories. I respect what you have built." He paused. "The ships we found are older than that by a margin. I am not going to say out loud, because the number alone would make your bridge crew stop believing me, and I need you believing me for the next 60 seconds more than I have ever needed anything." Vey's crest flattened. Around him, on the great ringed bridge of the flagship, his officers had gone very still, because they had all heard the same thing in the human's voice that he had. Not fear, not desperation, the flat, tired steadiness of someone reciting a warning he has been made to memorize, word for word, against the day he would finally have to give it. "You are stalling," said Vay's second, a younger commander named Tessa Run, hard and bright and certain the way the young always were. "Speaker, it is a trick to buy time. There is nothing out here. Let us end it and be done." "Be quiet," Vay said, without heat, and she was. He looked at the blue world on the screen. 6,000 years his people had filed humanity under the same heading, latecomer, harmless, a tithe-payer who knew its place. 6,000 years humanity had let them. And it occurred to the old speaker, all at once and very coldly, that a species clever enough to stay small on purpose for 6,000 years was not a species that did anything by accident. "Captain Cole," he said carefully, "if what you say is true, why did you not simply use these ships? Why hide? Why bow to us, and pay us, and let us speak to you as children, if you had warships older than the galaxy under your feet the whole time?" It was, Cole would think later, the only intelligent question the speaker asked in the entire exchange, and it deserved an honest answer. "Because they are not ours," Cole said. "We did not build them, and we do not own them. We are their keepers, not their masters. We found them asleep a long time ago, and we learned the one thing about them that matters." His voice dropped. "They were built to do exactly one job. They wake for exactly one reason, and in 6,000 years, we have never once been able to put them back to sleep early. You start them, they finish. There is no recall. There is no stand down. That is why I am begging you. Not because I am afraid of you. Because once I open the bay doors, this stops being something I can stop." "And what is the one reason they wake?" Vay asked. "You are looking at it," Cole said. "They wake when somebody points overwhelming force at a free world and tells it to kneel. That is the only alarm they have. You spent 11 hours assembling the exact thing they were made to answer. 31,000 hulls, parked over a home world, demanding surrender. Speaker, you did not bring a fleet out here. You rang a bell." Halan Vay was silent for 11 full seconds. Then his younger second, Tessa Run, made the decision for both of them. She was certain. She was sure it was a bluff, the way only the young and the unblooded can be sure, and she did not wait for her speaker to finish thinking. "Targeting the human vessel Long Patience," she announced to the fleet. "All forward batteries. We will show the child what overwhelming force looks like, and end this superstition before it costs us the rotation." "Belay that," Vay said sharply, suddenly, his old voice cracking up an octave. He was 400 years old, and he had just understood, one full breath too late, that every instinct he had ever trusted had been built for a galaxy where age meant strength, and the oldest thing in the room was always the most dangerous one. He had been the oldest thing in every room for a very long time. He was not the oldest thing in this one. "Belay that order," he said again, rising from his cradle. "Stand down. Stand every battery down. Do it now. I am giving the human his rotation. I am giving him a year. I am giving him whatever he..." He was too slow. By a single heartbeat, in a fleet of 31,000 hulls and 200,000 minds, the old speaker who had finally learned the truth was one heartbeat too slow. Tessa Run fired. And 40 light-years away, in the cold dark beyond the orbit of the outermost human world, in 1,100 quiet trenches dug into 1,100 lifeless moons, something that had been asleep since before the Orel Concordance had a name opened its eyes. Edrin Cole felt the deck change under his boots. Not shake, change. A low note came up through the hull of the Long Patience, through the soles of his feet, into his teeth, a sound older than music, and he closed his eyes, and he said the words his great-grandmother had taught him as a child, the words every keeper learned and prayed never to say. "They're awake," he whispered, Forgive us, they're awake. The thing that woke did not announce itself. That was the first wrongness, and to Halan Vey, watching from his cradle, it was the worst one. Every fleet he had ever fought announced itself. They lit their engines, they flared their shields, they sent challenge or threat or prayer across the open bands. Power, in the galaxy he knew, was loud. The strong made themselves heard, so the weak would have time to be afraid. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked. The human ships did not make a sound. Across 1,100 dead moons in the outer dark, the surface of the rock simply cracked, and opened, and let something rise. The scout feeds caught it in pieces. A long spine of dark hull, unlit, swallowing the starlight rather than reflecting it. Then another. Then 40 more from a single moon, lifting in a slow column like grave markers pulling themselves out of the ground. Then 400. Then a number the scout readers stopped calling out loud because their voices had begun to shake. "Count," Vey said. His own voice was not steady. "I want to count." The count came back in stages, each one worse than the last. 2,000 hulls rising from the 7th moon alone, Speaker. Correction. 2,000 from the 7th moon. There are 1,100 moons. Speaker, the surface readings. The moons are not moons. They are casings. The whole bodies are hollow. They are not dug into the rock. They are the rock. Someone hid an entire fleet inside a dead solar system and let it gather dust for... The reader stopped. He had reached the part of the sentence where the number lived, and he could not say it. Halan Vey said it for him, because he was the speaker, and reading the unbearable thing aloud was his function. "Older than us," he said softly. He was telling the truth. They are older than us. On the screen, the dark hulls finished rising and held, motionless, a wall of unlit shapes stretched across the outer system. They did not advance. They did not light their guns. They simply existed, in a quantity that made the Concordance's 31,000 warships look, for the first time in 11,000 years, like a small thing. The Orel Concordance had won every war it had ever fought by one method and one method only. It brought more. More hulls, more guns, more bodies than the enemy could kill before its own resolve broke. Overwhelming numbers had been the whole of Concordance doctrine since before Vey was hatched, and it had never failed, because there had never been anyone older, and older meant more, and more meant victory. The math had been on their side since the beginning of recorded time. The old speaker looked at the wall of ancient hulls and felt the math leave him. How many? Tessa Runn breathed. She had fired the shot. She was the reason this was happening. Her certainty had drained out of her so completely that her voice had gone to a child's pitch. "Speaker, how many are there?" "Enough," said a new voice on the channel. It was not Captain Cole. It was older, and it was strange, and it did not come from the long patience. It came from everywhere at once. From all 1,100 moons, from the dark wall itself, a chorus of identical voices speaking with the unhurried weight of something that had been waiting a very, very long time to be needed. "We are the deep keel," the chorus said. "We were made before your law. We do not recognize precedents. We recognize only this. A free world has been ordered to kneel, and we were built so that it would never have to. You rang us. We came. Now we will explain to you, slowly and only once, what kind of mistake you have made." Halan Vey gripped the edge of his cradle with both ancient hands. "This is Speaker of Precedence Halan Vey, of the Orel Concordance," he said, and to his own credit, his voice held. "I withdraw the demand. I withdraw all demands. The shot was fired against my order by a junior officer. I am declaring a full stand-down across my fleet. I am asking, I am asking the Deep Keel for the chance to leave. We heard you ask, the chorus said. We heard your keeper ask you to leave, 11 minutes ago, before the shot. We heard you refuse. We are awake now. There is no recall. Your keeper told you this. He was telling the truth about that, as well. The dark wall began to move. It did not move the way fleets moved. There was no slow acceleration, no ramping of engines, no warning flare. One instant, the 1100-fold fleet hung motionless at the edge of the system. The next instant, it was simply closer, as though distance were a suggestion it had chosen to ignore, as though the rules that governed how a hull crossed space had been written after these hulls and did not apply to them. Vade's instruments could not measure the movement. They simply reported a new position, and then another, and the gap between the dark fleet and his own began to vanish. All ships, Vade commanded. Open every channel. Broadcast the stand down. We are not attacking. We are not attacking. Lower your guns. Show them lowered guns. Do it now. Do it now. Do it. 31,000 Concordance warships powered down their batteries in unison. It was the fastest stand-down in the history of the fleet, and it was driven by the purest terror 200,000 minds had ever shared. Across the Armada, weapons that had ended civilizations folded shut. Targeting locks released. Shields dropped to standby. The largest war machine the Concordance had assembled in 9 centuries opened its hands and showed them empty, the way a child shows empty hands when the adult has finally turned around. For one held breath, Vey allowed himself to hope it would be enough. Then he watched the Deep Keel arrive among his fleet, and he learned what the human captain had meant by the word finish. The dark hulls did not fire. That was the part Vey would never be able to make his council believe. In the years afterward, when he tried to tell the truth, and was called mad for it. In all the long horror of that hour, the Deep Keel did not fire a single weapon. They had no need of weapons. They had been built before weapons were the answer, by a people who had understood something deeper and older about how to end a fleet. The first thing the Concordance noticed was that its ships had stopped answering. Not all at once. In ones and twos, across the Armada, warships simply went quiet. Their crews remained alive, their hulls remained whole, but the ships no longer obeyed their masters. Helm did not respond, engines would not light, guns would not arm. A dark Deep Keel hull would pass near a Concordance battleship, close but never touching, and the battleship would, in the space of a breath, simply forget how to be a warship. It became a sealed room full of living crew, drifting, harmless, going wherever the Deep Keel decided it should go. They are turning our ships off, a reader said, in a voice gone flat with shock. Speaker, they are turning them off, like lamps. We cannot stop it. We cannot. How many have we lost? None, Speaker. That is, none. No crew dead, no hull breached. They are not killing the ships. They are taking them. They are taking the whole fleet, ship by ship, and putting it where they want it. And there is nothing we can do, because the moment a hull resists, it stops working. Halan Vey understood, then, the full shape of the trap he had walked his people into, and the understanding was worse than any wound. He had brought overwhelming numbers. He had been so proud of the number, 31,000 hulls. And the Deep Keel had looked at his 31,000 hulls the way a grown creature looks at a child's army of pebbles laid out on the floor, and it had begun, with terrible patience, to pick the pebbles up one at a time and set them in a corner where they could do no harm. The Concordance had spent 11,000 years learning to overwhelm. It had never once been overwhelmed. It had never imagined that overwhelming could be done to it, because by every law it knew, there was nothing old enough or large enough to do it. It had not counted on a child who knew how to wait. "Captain Cole," Vey said into the channel, and now there was no pride left in his voice at all, only the bare bone of an old creature begging. "Captain Cole, I know you can hear me. I am asking you, as a keeper, as the one who controls these things, tell them to stop. We have surrendered. We have lowered our guns. Tell them we are not the enemy anymore." Cole's voice came back from the bridge of the long patience, tired and sad and entirely human. "Speaker, I told you," he said, "I am not their master. No one is. I am their keeper, and a keeper's whole job is to make sure they are never woken, because once they are, this is the only thing they do. I could not stop them if I begged on my knees, and I have tried, in other centuries, and I have failed every time." A long breath. "But I can tell you what they are doing, if it helps. They are not killing your fleet. They have not killed anyone in 6,000 years, that we know of, because we have only had to wake a piece of them twice, and both times the records say the same thing. They take the guns away. They take the war away. And then they make the ones who started it understand." "Understand what?" Vey whispered. "What it feels like," Cole said, "to be small and old and certain you are safe, and to have something even older look at you and decide whether you get to keep existing. That is the whole lesson. They will hold a mirror up to you, Speaker. They will let you feel exactly what you came here to make a free world feel. And then, if the Keeper's records hold, they will make a choice about you that I have no part in and no power over." The dark fleet kept arriving. More moons cracked open behind the first wave, a second tide of unlit hulls rising from rock that the Concordance had charted 10,000 years ago and dismissed as worthless. The number had stopped being a number. It had become a weather, a tide, a fact of the universe that the Armada was now simply inside of. And Halan Vey, 400 years old, speaker of precedents, master of a law that said the oldest thing in the room ruled, sat in his cradle and waited to find out what the truly oldest thing in the room had decided he deserved. The chorus spoke again, then, and this time it spoke only to him. "Speaker Halan Vey," the Deep Keel said, "you are the eldest mind in your fleet. By your own law, you carry the weight of what your fleet does, so you will be the one we explain it to. Watch closely. We are going to show you the thing your people have done to 200 worlds, and we are going to show it to you, the only way an old creature ever truly learns anything. We are going to do it to you." The Deep Keel began with his flagship. It was the oldest hull in the Concordance fleet, the 9,000-year relic Vey had stood inside with such pride, the ship his whole civilization treated as a holy thing, because nothing else they owned came close to its age. He had always felt safest aboard it. Of all the hulls in the galaxy, surely this one, the eldest, was the one that age would protect. A single deep-keel ship slid up alongside it. Just one, against the most venerated warship the Concordance possessed. The flagship died the way the others had. It did not burn. It did not break. It simply forgot itself. The lights stayed on. The air stayed warm. But every system that made it a warship went dark and silent, helm and weapons and engines all folding shut at once. And Halan Vey felt his proud, ancient, sacred flagship become a drifting box of frightened crew, and he understood, in his bones, that the thing his entire law was built on had just been proven worthless in front of him. His ship was the oldest in his fleet, and the oldest in his fleet was a hatchling's toy to the things now moving among his armada. "You revere age," the chorus said to him, conversational, almost kind. "You built a law on it. You taught 200 conquered peoples that the older thing has the right to take from the younger. We are going to teach you the rest of that lesson now, the half-year law left out. There is always something older, and the older thing is not always cruel. We are about to show you the difference between an old thing that takes and an old thing that protects. You have been the first your whole life. Now you will meet the truly old, and you will see what they chose to do with their years. Across the system, the holding had become an art. The Deep Keel were not destroying the Concordance fleet. They were arranging it. They watched the scout feeds with a kind of sick wonder as 31,000 of his warships were lifted, one by one, out of their formation and set down in a vast, slow, perfect sphere around the 1,100 dead moons. Each hull was placed with care, alive, intact, harmless, its crew unhurt, and its guns asleep. It was not a graveyard. That was the thing that broke something in the old speaker. A graveyard he could have understood. This was a nursery. The Deep Keel were handling his terrible war fleet the way a patient hand gathers up scattered, dangerous toys before a child can hurt itself on them. "Why are you not killing us?" Vey said. He had to know. The not knowing was worse than dying. "You have the power. You have proven it. Every law I have ever lived by says the stronger ends the weaker. You are stronger than anything that has ever existed. Why are we still breathing?" "Because that is your law," the chorus answered. "Not ours. The stronger ends the weaker. That is the rule of a people who learned strength and never learned anything after it. We learned strength 100,000 years before your egg was laid. We had time to learn the next thing. Do you know what the next thing is, Speaker, after strength?" "No," Vey admitted. "Restraint," the Deep Keel said. "The hardest thing in the universe is to be able to end something and choose not to. Any fool can destroy what is weaker. It takes 100,000 years to learn how not to. Your people stopped learning at strength. The humans who keep us understood this about us in the first generation. It is why we let them keep us. They are young, but they understood the one thing your old empire never did." On the bridge of the Long Patience, Edrin Cole listened, and his hands were shaking, because he had heard this part of the chorus only twice before in the recorded history of his line, and both times the keeper who heard it had wept. "Speaker," Cole said quietly, "can I tell you the part of the story that matters? The part about why we hid them?" "Tell me," Vey said. He had nothing left to do but listen. 6,000 years ago, when humanity first crawled out into the dark, we were exactly what you think we are now, Cole said. Young, small, loud, sure that the universe owed us a place at the table. We found the Deep Keel by accident, asleep in these moons, and the first thing my ancestors thought, the very first thing, was the same thing you thought when you got here. We can use these. We can rule with these. We can make the whole galaxy kneel. "What stopped you?" Vey asked. "They did," Cole said. "We woke a piece of them, just a piece, to see what they could do, and they did exactly what they are doing to you now. They took our weapons away, gentle as anything, and they held a mirror up to us, and they made us feel what we were about to become. A young, hungry empire with the oldest guns in the galaxy, ready to do to everyone else what was being done to us by the bigger fleets of that age." His voice was very low. "And then they gave us a choice, the same choice they are about to give you. They said, you can be the empire that takes, or you can be the keepers of the thing that protects. You cannot be both. Choose." "And you chose to hide them," Vey said. "We chose to keep them," Cole corrected. "There is a difference. We swore, as a species, that we would stay small, that we would never use these ships to conquer, only to keep them from anyone who would, that we would pay your tithes and bow our heads and let the whole galaxy think we were nothing, for as long as it took, so that no fleet would ever come out here curious and dig up the most dangerous thing that has ever existed, and use it the way you came here planning to. A pause. 6,000 years, speaker. 6,000 years of bowing to fleets we could have unmade in an afternoon, because the deep keel taught us that the bowing was the strength, and the unmaking was the weakness. You called us children. We let you. It was the price of the watch. Halanve was silent for a long time. In 400 years he had never once felt small. He had been the oldest mind in every gathering, the final word in every dispute, the living embodiment of a law that placed him at the top of every room he entered. And now he understood that for the entire duration of his proud, ancient, certain life, there had been a quiet young species at the edge of his maps, kneeling to him on purpose, paying him tribute on purpose, letting him feel old and powerful and supreme, while it sat on top of the most terrible fleet in the history of the galaxy and chose, every single day, not to use it. The humility of it was so vast he could not find the edges. "Your law is wrong," Vey said finally, and saying it cost him something he could not name. "The oldest thing in the room does not have the right to take. I have spent my life enforcing a thing that is wrong." "Now you understand," the chorus said, without triumph. "That is the first half of the lesson. There is a second half, and it is harder, and only the eldest mind in a fleet is made to carry it. Watch, speaker. We are not finished showing you what your people did to the worlds you called latecomers. We are going to let you stand where they stood, and then we are going to give you the choice the humans were given. The same words, the exact same words." The Dark Fleet finished gathering the Concordance Armada into its perfect, gentle sphere. 31,000 warships hung disarmed and unharmed in the dark, their 200,000 crew alive, their guns asleep, the largest invasion fleet of the age, held in the palm of a hand 100,000 years old. And in the center of it all, the 1,100-fold deep keel turned, as one body, toward the flagship of the creature who had rung the bell, and began, slowly, to show Halanve the truth. The way the deep keel showed a thing was not with words. Words could be argued with. Words could be filed and forgotten and explained away by a council of comfortable elders 10,000 light years from the worlds they had ordered burned. The deep keel had learned, long before the concordance existed, that an old creature only truly learns through its own skin. So they put the memory of 200 conquered worlds directly into the eldest mind in the fleet. Halanve did not see images. He lived them. For the span of a few minutes that felt to him like 100 years, he was no longer the speaker of precedence on the bridge of a disarmed flagship. He was a small green world at the far edge of the early concordance, watching an armada of older hulls slide into orbit and demand surrender. He felt the terror of a people who had done nothing wrong except be younger than the fleet above them. He felt the law read down at them from the sky. The oldest claim rules, the first to fly commands the ones built after, vacate or be erased. He felt them lower their guns and beg. He felt the armada take everything anyway, because that was what overwhelming numbers were for, because there was no one older to stop it, because the universe in that age had no deep keel awake in it to hold the mirror up. He felt the world die, not quickly. The concordance never did anything quickly. He felt it die the slow administrative death of a place processed into a breeding reserve. Its people relocated to holding belts. Its name struck from the charts. Its whole existence reduced to a line of small board script at the bottom of a demand exactly like the one he had sent to Earth 11 hours ago. He felt it 200 times. One world for every world his concordance had filed under the heading latecomer and taken. When it ended, Halanve was lying across his command cradle, and he was making a sound that no one on his bridge had ever heard an elder make, and his second, Tessa Runn, the one who had fired the shot, was kneeling beside him with her crest pressed flat to the deck, in shame so total she could not lift her head. "Now you have stood where they stood," the chorus said, gently. "Now you know what your numbers were for. Not strength. Strength is what you told yourselves it was. It was theft. It was always only theft, dressed in the robes of age." "I know," Vay said. His voice was wrecked. "I know now. I knew before. I did not let myself know. There is a difference. And I have spent 400 years living in the difference. And I am ashamed in a way I did not know an old creature could still feel." "Good," the deep keel said. "Shame is the beginning of the second half of the lesson. Listen carefully, speaker, because the keepers cannot give you this part, and we will only say it once. And what you do with it will decide whether 31,000 of your ships go home or stay here forever, as quiet, harmless rooms full of the living. You came here to make a free world kneel. You rang us. By every right that exists, old or new, we could end you, and the galaxy would be cleaner for it, and no one would ever mourn the fleet that came to turn a homeworld into a reserve." The dark wall pressed close around the disarmed armada, 1,100 ancient hulls, patient as gravestones, waiting. "But we are not your law," the chorus said. "We do not end the weaker because we can. We learned the next thing. So we are going to offer you exactly what we offered the humans 6,000 years ago, in these same words. And then, old creature, for the first time in your long life, you are going to have to choose." The choice the deep keel offered was the simplest sentence Halan Vey had ever heard, and the heaviest. "You can be the empire that takes," the chorus said, "or you can become the keeper of the thing that protects. You cannot be both. Choose." It was the same offer the humans had answered 6,000 years before. Vey understood that now. He understood that he was standing exactly where Edrin Cole's distant ancestors had stood, a young, proud thing with the oldest guns in the galaxy held away from his hands, being asked the only question that had ever mattered. And he understood, with a clarity that hurt, that the wrong answer did not mean death. The deep keel did not kill. The wrong answer meant his fleet would stay here, disarmed and gentle, and forever. 31,000 quiet rooms of the living, while the rest of the Concordance learned, slowly, that the armada it sent to take Earth had simply never come back, and that something out here in the dark did not care how old you were. "I do not understand the offer," Vey said honestly. "You say I can become a keeper. A keeper of what? You belong to the humans. They found you. By every law I know, that makes you theirs." "We belong to no one," the chorus said. "The humans keep us. That is not ownership. It is service. And keeping is not a thing one species does alone forever. It is a thing that is meant to spread, slowly, to anyone old enough to learn it. The humans have carried the watch for 6,000 years. They are tired, speaker. Keeping is a heavy thing. They have bowed to fleet after fleet, paid tithe after tithe, swallowed insult after insult, all to keep us hidden and asleep, and away from hands that would misuse us. They have done it alone for 60 centuries. We think it is time they had help." On the bridge of the long patience, Edrin Cole went very still, because this was not in any record his line had ever kept. This had never happened before. The deep keel had never offered the keeping to anyone but humanity. "You are asking me," Vey said slowly, "to help the humans guard you. Me, the creature who rang you, the speaker of an empire that has taken 200 worlds. You would trust that. We would trust the creature who just felt 200 worlds die in his own skin, and made a sound no elder is supposed to be able to make," the deep keel answered. "Trust is not given to the innocent, speaker. The innocent have not been tested. Trust is given to the one who has done the worst thing, and understood it, and chosen, with full knowledge of what he is, to do the better thing instead. The humans were not innocent when they were offered the watch. They were hungry conquerors with their hands halfway to the trigger. They chose anyway. We are asking whether you can do what they did. Vey looked at his fleet, gathered into its gentle sphere, 31,000 crews waiting to learn whether they would ever see home again. He looked at his second, Tessa Run, still kneeling, the young certain one whose certainty had nearly ended them all. He looked at the blue world on the screen, the home world he had come here to turn into a breeding reserve, which had been guarded all this while by people who knelt to him on purpose to keep him from his own worst nature. "Why," he said, "why offer this to me at all? You could simply send me home humbled. You could keep my fleet forever. Why ask a conqueror to become a guardian?" "Because that is the only thing that ever actually ends a war," the chorus said. "Killing the enemy does not end war. It teaches the next enemy to come harder. Humbling the enemy does not end war. It teaches them to wait and rebuild, and return with a grudge. The only thing that has ever truly ended a war, in 100,000 years of our watching, is when the one who came to take is turned into one who protects. An enemy you destroy is replaced. An enemy you remake is gone forever, because the thing that wanted to fight you no longer exists. We are not offering you mercy, speaker. Mercy is too small a word. We are offering you a way to make the Orel Concordance stop being the thing that takes. Forever, from the inside." Halan Vey was 400 years old, and in all those years, he had never once been asked to become something better than he was. The law of precedence did not ask things to improve. It asked them only to be older. He had risen to the top of his civilization by simply outlasting everyone above him, and he had mistaken that for greatness. And he understood now that he had never in his life done a single hard thing, because being old was not hard. Anyone could grow old. Choosing to be better was the hard thing, and it had been waiting for him out here in the dark his entire life, and he had almost died without ever being asked. "What would it require?" he said. "If I chose to become a keeper, what would I have to do?" "You would carry the truth home," the deep keel said. "Not a story, the truth, the whole of it, the way it lives in your skin now. You would stand before your council, and you would tell them that the oldest law of the Concordance is a thief's law, and you would tell them what you felt when you stood where the latecomer world stood. Some of them will call you mad, some of them will call you broken. The young, certain ones will want to send another fleet to prove the old strength still works. You will have to stand against them, alone at first, with nothing but the truth in your skin, and the memory of what you saw. You will have to spend the rest of your long life turning the Concordance, world by world, away from taking, and toward keeping. It is harder than any war you have ever fought. It will take longer than you have. You will not see the end of it." The chorus paused. "That is the keeping. That is what the humans have done, quietly, alone, for 6,000 years. We are asking if you will help them choose." The bridge of the flagship was utterly silent. And then Tessa Run lifted her head from the deck. She was young. She was the one who had fired. She was, by the law of precedence, the least important voice on the bridge, a junior commander who should have stayed silent and let the elders speak. But she had felt the edge of the memory too, bleeding off her speaker as the deep keel poured 200 worlds into him, and something in her had broken open that would never close again. "Speaker," she said, her voice raw, "I fired the shot. I was so certain. I was certain the way you taught all of us to be certain. That we were oldest, that we were strongest, that being older meant we were right. I almost killed every soul in this fleet because I believed the thing our whole civilization believes." She pressed her crest to the deck again. "If you choose to carry the truth home, I will carry it with you. I will stand beside you in the council. They will call you mad, and they will call me a traitor, and I do not care. I felt those worlds die. I cannot unfeel it. I do not want to be the empire that takes. Please, choose the keeping, and let me help you. Halan Vey looked at his young second, the one who had nearly doomed them all, now begging to be remade, and he understood the Deep Keel had been right about everything. Trust was not for the innocent. It was for the ones who had done the worst thing and turned away from it. He had done the worst thing. So had she. And out here, in the dark, an old fleet that could have ended them both was offering them the one thing the law of precedence had never offered anyone in 11,000 years. A chance to become better than their age. Captain Cole, Vey said, into the open channel, his ancient voice steady at last. I have an answer for the Deep Keel, but I would like to give it to you first. Keeper to keeper, if you will accept the words. On the bridge of the Long Patience, Edrin Cole, 49 years old, the latest in a line of keepers 6,000 years long, found that his eyes had filled. He had spent his whole life training for the conversation where humanity finally revealed what it had been hiding. He had always assumed that conversation would end in fire. No keeper in the entire history of his line had ever imagined it might end like this. I will accept the word, speaker, Cole said softly. Go ahead. Halan Vey rose from his cradle, old and gray and slow, and stood as straight as his 400 years would let him, and gave his answer to the keeper of the warships older than his empire. I choose to keep, he said. I choose to protect. I will carry the truth home, and I will spend the rest of my life turning my people away from the thing they are. I do not know if I will succeed. I know I will not live to see the end of it, but I would rather die a failed keeper than live another day as a successful thief. He bowed his crest, the deep bow his people gave only to the oldest thing in the room, and gave it, for the first time in his life, to a species 6,000 years younger than his own, humanity. I see you now. I am sorry it took the oldest fleet in the galaxy to make me look. Teach me how to keep the watch. For a long moment, the dark fleet was still. Then the chorus spoke one last time to Halan Vey, and there was something in it that had not been there before. Something that, in a 100,000-year-old voice, sounded almost like warmth. The watch is yours to share now, speaker, the Deep Keel said. Go home. Carry the truth. The humans will teach you the rest, in the years to come, the way an elder teaches a hatchling, which is the right order of things, and the order your law forgot. You came here the oldest thing you knew, certain of your right to take. You will leave here the youngest keeper in the galaxy, with everything still to learn. That is not a fall, speaker. That is the only true rising there is. And then, ship by ship, gently, the Deep Keel began to give the Concordance fleet back. It happened the way the taking had happened, only in reverse, and watching it was its own kind of education for the 200,000 minds of the Armada. A dark Deep Keel hull would drift near a sleeping Concordance warship, close but never touching, and the warship would wake. Lights came up, helm answered, engines lit. The crew, who had spent the worst hour of their lives trapped in a box that would not obey them, felt their ship become a ship again, and across the whole vast sphere, a sound rose that the Concordance fleet had never made before, not in 11,000 years of victory. It was not a cheer, it was relief, the deep shaking relief of creatures who had been certain they would die, and had been handed back their lives by a thing that owed them nothing. But the Deep Keel did not simply hand the fleet back and let it go. There was a last lesson built into the returning, and Edrin Cole, watching from the Long Patience, recognized it, because his own ancestors had been taught the same thing 6,000 years before. The Deep Keel gave the ships back disarmed. Every hull woke with helm and engines and life support restored. Every hull woke with its weapons still asleep. 31,000 warships came back to life as ships that could fly and steer and carry their crews safely home and could not fire a single shot. The guns did not return. They would never return. Not from these hulls, not ever. The deep keel had reached into the most terrible invasion fleet of the age and taken its claws, gently, permanently, and given back everything else. "You are sending us home unarmed," Vey said. It was not a complaint. He had stopped complaining. It was the observation of a creature learning a new shape of the world. "We are sending you home as what a fleet should be," the chorus answered. "A thing that carries its people safely, not a thing that takes. You will not need the guns where you are going, speaker. You are going home to argue, not to fight. The hardest war you will ever wage will be fought entirely with words, in your own council, against your own kind, and no weapon we could leave you would help you win it. We are leaving you the only thing that will. The truth in your skin, and a fleet that can carry it home, and a young commander beside you who felt the same worlds die." A pause, and one thing more. "So that your council cannot call you mad and bury you. Look to your seventh moon, speaker." Halanve looked, and on the scout feed, the seventh of the 1100 moons opened once more, and a single deep-keel hull rose out of it, unlit, ancient, terrible, and turned, and fell into formation behind the long patience like a hound coming to heel. "One of us will go with you," the deep keel said. "Not to threaten your council, not to rule, to stand silent in your home system, asleep, as proof. When the certain young ones rise and call you broken, and demand you send another fleet, you will not have to argue. You will only have to point. One of us, awake at the edge of your maps, will say everything that needs saying, the way it has said it to the galaxy for 6,000 years from the edge of the human maps. The keepers will teach you how to tend it. It is a heavy gift, speaker. It is the heaviest gift there is. Carry it well." Edrin Cole understood, then, the true size of what was happening, and it took the breath out of him. The deep keel were not just sparing the Concordance. They were ending 6,000 years of human solitude. For 60 centuries, humanity had carried the watch alone, the only species in the galaxy trusted to keep the oldest fleet asleep, the only keeper, bowing and paying, and pretending to be small so that no one would ever come looking. Cole had felt the loneliness of it his whole life, the weight of a secret that could never be shared, a strength that could never be shown, a service that no one would ever thank them for because no one was ever allowed to know it existed. And now the watch had a second keeper, a flawed one, a conqueror, an enemy who had come to take Earth and had been turned, in a single hour, into a guardian. The deep keel had done the one thing Cole's people had never dared to attempt in 6,000 years. They had grown the watch. "Speaker," Cole said, and his voice was thick, "when you reach home, and the arguing starts, and it will be ugly, there is a thing the first keepers wrote down, the human ancestors who took this same offer 6,000 years ago. I would like to give it to you. It is the only inheritance we have that is worth anything." "I would be honored to receive it," Vey said. "They wrote it the night they chose to keep instead of conquer," Cole said. "It is short. It is the whole of what we are. They wrote, we will not be the oldest thing that takes. We will be the oldest thing that stays awake so the taking can stop." He let the words settle across 40 light years. "That is the watch, speaker. That is all of it. We stay awake. We stay small. We let the galaxy think we are nothing. And we keep the most dangerous thing that has ever existed asleep, so that no one, not us, not you, not anyone, ever uses it to make a free world kneel. Welcome to the watch. You are the second species ever to join it. May you carry it better than your law, and longer than your shame, and may you teach it to your young, the way you should have been taught from the beginning. Halan Vey received the words in silence, and then he did a thing that no speaker of precedence had done in the 11,000-year history of the Concordance. He removed the seal of precedence from his crest. The old badge of office, the mark that said he was the eldest and therefore the rightful taker, the symbol his whole civilization bent its neck to. He took it off, there on the bridge of his disarmed flagship, in front of his fleet and the keepers and the warships older than his empire, and he set it down on the deck. I am no longer the speaker of precedence, he said. There is no precedence. The law is dead. I felt it die when I felt 200 worlds die in my skin. He straightened, gray and old and somehow, for the first time, young. I am a keeper now, the first keeper of my people, and I will spend every year I have left teaching my kind that the oldest thing in the room does not get to take. The oldest thing in the room is supposed to protect. That is what age is for. We forgot. We will remember now, if I have to make us remember one council at a time, for the rest of my life. And in the dark, the warships older than every empire in the galaxy, the deep keel, that had slept 6,000 years inside dead moons at the edge of the human maps, heard the old conqueror lay down the law of taking, and, satisfied, began at last to think about going back to sleep. The deep keel did not go back to sleep all at once, and Edrin Cole was grateful for that, because there was one more thing he had to do, and it could not wait until the morning. He had to go aboard them. It was the duty of the keeper, written into the oldest of his line's records, and Cole had read about it his whole life and never once expected to perform it. When a piece of the deep keel woke, a keeper had to go aboard the eldest hull and bear witness to the waking, so that humanity would always know, in person, what it was that slept at the edge of its maps. His great-grandmother had done it the last time, 200 years before, and she had come back changed and quiet, and she had never spoken of what she saw inside. Cole took a single shuttle out from the long patience, alone, across the dark toward the nearest of the ancient hulls. As he flew, he watched the Concordance fleet begin its long withdrawal, 31,000 disarmed warships turning for home, carrying back a truth that would tear their empire apart and remake it. He watched the one deep keel hull fall in behind them, the silent proof, the gift. He watched Halan Vey's flagship lead them out, the old conqueror who was now the first keeper of his kind, and he felt something he had not expected to feel at the end of all this. He felt less alone. The shuttle settled into a bay in the side of the ancient hull, a bay that had not opened in 200 years, and Cole stepped out into the inside of a warship older than every empire in the galaxy, and he understood why his great-grandmother had never spoken of it. It was not a machine. That was the first thing. He had expected corridors, consoles, the cold geometry of a weapon. Instead, he walked into something that felt grown, or sung, or remembered. The walls held a faint light that did not come from any lamp. The air was warm, and smelled of nothing he could name. And everywhere, in the deck and the bulkheads and the long curving spaces, there was a sense of attention, of a vast patient mind that had been awake for a few hours after 60 centuries of sleep, and was using the time to look, carefully, at the small human who had come aboard. "You are the keeper," the deep keel said. Here, inside, the chorus was a single voice, close and quiet. "Edrin Cole, latest of the line that found us. We know your great-grandmother. She walked here. She was kind. She was tired, the way all of you are tired." "I came to bear witness," Cole said. His voice was small in the warm light. "It is my duty to see the waking and carry it home, so that we remember what we keep. Then we will show you what you keep, the deep keel said, not the weapons. You have seen what we do, today, with your eyes. We will show you the why. We have never shown a keeper the why. But you are tired, all of you, 6,000 years tired, and the second keeper has just been born, and we think it is time the first keepers understood what they have been guarding. Sit, Edrin Cole. This will not take long, and it will stay with you forever. Cole sat on the warm-grown deck of the oldest warship in the galaxy, and the deep keel showed him where they came from. He saw a people, not human, not concordance, nothing he had a name for. An old people, ancient beyond the reach of any record, who had lived in a galaxy even crueler than this one, a galaxy where overwhelming numbers ruled absolutely, and the strong devoured the weak as a matter of simple physics. He saw that people lose. He saw their worlds taken, one after another, by fleets older and larger and hungrier than anything the Concordance had ever fielded. He saw them dwindle to a last few worlds, a last few minds, a people who knew they were going to die. And he saw what they decided to do with the end of themselves. They did not build a weapon to win. They had no illusions left about winning. They built a thing to make winning unnecessary. They poured everything they were, every mind and memory and year of their long dying, into a fleet that would have one purpose and one only. Not to conquer, not to avenge. To wake, forever, whenever overwhelming force was pointed at a free world and told it to kneel, and to take the war away, gently, and hold a mirror up to the taker, and offer the choice. Be the thing that takes, or become the thing that protects. Choose. They built the deep keel as their last act. A fleet of warships that would outlive every empire, that would carry the one lesson their whole civilization had learned too late, that would wander the dark and sleep in dead moons, and wake only for the oldest crime there is, the strong telling the weak to kneel. They could not save themselves. So they built a thing to save everyone who came after, in every age, for as long as the fleet endured. And then they died. The last free people of an age the galaxy had forgotten, laid down inside their own creation, and went quiet. And the deep keel slept, and drifted, and woke twice in 100,000 years for crimes too large to ignore, and slept again, and waited, until a young, hungry species called humanity stumbled across them in a handful of dead moons, and reached for them with conquest in its heart, and was offered the choice, and chose, against every instinct, to keep instead of take. That is what you guard, the deep keel said softly, as the vision faded, and Edrin Cole found himself weeping on the warm deck. The last gift of a dead people. The only inheritance they could leave a galaxy that murdered them. They could not stop the strong from taking. So they built a thing that would, forever, in their place. And they trusted it to whatever young hands came after. Your hands, keeper, and now the conqueror's hands too. You have carried it for 6,000 years and thought it a burden. It is not a burden. It is the kindest thing the universe has ever made, and you are the ones the dead chose to carry it. That is not a weight, Edrin Cole. That is the highest honor that has ever been given to anyone. Cole sat for a long time in the warm light, and he understood, finally, the thing his great-grandmother had never been able to say. The watch was not a secret to be ashamed of. It was not a strength they were hiding out of fear. For 6,000 years, humanity had bowed and paid and pretended to be small, and his ancestors had carried it like a burden, like a thing endured. But it was not endurance. It was love. It was a young species being trusted by the dead to carry the last gift of a vanished people, and carrying it, faithfully, for 60 centuries, without thanks, without glory, without ever being allowed to say what it was. Humanity had not been hiding warships. Humanity had been keeping a promise made by people 100,000 years dead. And today, for the first time, the promise had grown. Today, a second species had been trusted with it. "Thank you," Cole said, to the warm and patient dark, "for showing me. I will carry it home. I will tell my people what we really keep. They have thought it a burden too long. They should know it is an honor." "Tell them," the Deep Keel agreed. "And tell them one thing more, from us, that we have never said to a keeper before. Tell them that they have done it well. 6,000 years, alone, in silence, with no one to thank them. They have done it well. The dead would be proud of you. We are proud of you. Now go home, keeper, and rest, and teach the second keeper how it is done. The watch is wider tonight than it has ever been. That is your doing. That is humanity's doing. Be proud of it." There was one more thing before he left. As Cole reached the bay where his shuttle waited, the warm light of the ancient hull shifted, and the single quiet voice of the Deep Keel spoke to him one last time, and what it said was not for humanity, and not for the Concordance. It was for him. "Keeper," it said, "you are tired. We have watched the tiredness grow in your line for 6,000 years, generation after generation, the weight of a secret too large to share. We have something to give you, not to your people, to you, the one who walked here tonight, the one who begged a fleet of 31,000 to turn back, because you did not want to wake us. Do you know why we trust humanity above all the species that have ever found us?" "No," Cole said. "I have wondered my whole life. We are young. We are small. We were hungry conquerors when you found us. Why us?" "Because of what you did tonight," the Deep Keel said. "Not 6,000 years ago, tonight, when the Concordance came with 31,000 hulls and ordered your homeworld to kneel, you did not wake us in triumph. You did not reach for the oldest guns in the galaxy and make the enemy pay. You begged them to leave. You offered the creature who came to erase your species the only mercy you were permitted, and you offered it 3 times, and you meant it. A people who hold the most terrible fleet in existence, and still beg the enemy to spare them the using of it. That is the only kind of people who should ever be trusted to keep us. The ones who want to use us are exactly the ones who must never hold us. You have never wanted to use us. In 6,000 years, not one keeper has ever wanted to. That is why it is you. That is why it will always be you." Cole stood very still in the warm light. "We are old," the Deep Keel went on, "older than your words can hold. And in all our age we have learned that the safest hands are the reluctant ones. The hands that shake before they open the bay doors. The hands that pray they will never have to. Your hands shook tonight, Keeper. We felt them shake from 1,100 moons away. That is why your world still turns. Not because you are strong, because you did not want to be. Carry that home too. Tell your people the reluctance is not weakness. The reluctance is the whole reason the dead chose you. Now go and rest. You have earned it more than any keeper before you, because you grew the watch, and no one ever did that before." Edrin Cole bowed, the way a keeper bows, deep and silent, to the last gift of a dead people, and then he turned and walked back to his shuttle, and the warm light dimmed behind him, and the ancient hull began, slowly, to sleep. He flew home through the dark, past the withdrawing Concordance fleet, past the silent gift hull falling in behind them, past the slow blue turning of the world his ancestors had sworn 6,000 years ago to keep small and safe and unnoticed. Far ahead of him, the Concordance fleet was already learning what it meant to fly home defeated by something that had refused to defeat it. There is a particular silence aboard a fleet that has been spared. Halan Vey moved through it, like a creature waiting. His 31,000 ships flew in perfect order, disarmed, alive, every crew unharmed, and not one of them could find a single word to say. They had come to take a world. They had been taken instead, gently, completely, and then given back, and the kindness of it sat heavier on them than any wound. A fleet that loses can rage. A fleet that is spared by something that could have ended it has nothing to rage against. It can only sit with the truth of what it almost became. Tessa Runn found her speaker on the bridge of the disarmed flagship, looking back at the dwindling moons. "They will not believe us," she said. "The Council. When we tell them, they will say we are broken. They will say the humans tricked us, or that we lost our nerve, or that we invented a fleet to excuse a defeat. The young ones especially. They will want to send another armada to prove the old strength still works." "I know," Vey said. "What do we do when they will not believe us?" The old keeper looked back at the one silent deep-keel hull, falling in behind them, the gift, the proof, the warship older than the empire it was traveling toward. "We do what the humans did for 6,000 years, he said. "We endure. We say the truth again and again, calmly, no matter how many times they call us mad. We do not raise a fleet. We do not take a single world. We bow our heads, and we keep saying it, until one council, then another, then a whole generation, begins to feel the wrongness of the old law the way we felt it tonight. It will take longer than my life. It will take longer than yours. That is the watch, Tessa. The watch is mostly waiting. The humans taught me that the most powerful thing in the galaxy spent 6,000 years choosing to wait, and choosing to seem small, and choosing not to use the strength it held. If they could do it, alone, unthanked, for 60 centuries, we can do it too. We have to. There is nothing else worth doing now." Tessa Runn was quiet a long moment. "His speaker," she said, "when you stood where the burned world stood, when the deep keel put it in your skin, was it as bad as I felt at the edge of it?" "It was worse than anything I have words for," Vey said, "and I will keep it forever, and I am glad of it. A thing that hurts that much is a thing you do not forget, and a thing you do not forget is a thing you will never do again. The deep keel did not punish me, Tessa. They gave me a memory that will keep my whole species honest, if I am brave enough to share it. That is not cruelty. That is the deepest mercy there is. They could have killed us. Instead, they gave us the one wound that heals into wisdom." He straightened, set course for home. "We have a war to start. The hardest one our people have ever fought, and the only one worth winning. And we will fight every battle of it, with nothing but words and a truth in our skin, and an old gray fool who finally learned what age is for." And so the Concordance fleet flew home, carrying the seed of its own remaking, the first keeper of its kind at its head, and the second keeper learning at his side, and the warship older than their empire flying silent and patient behind, and the galaxy did not yet know that the largest invasion fleet of the age had set out to conquer a small blue world, and come back, instead, as guardians. That was the thing humanity had been hiding all along. Not warships. The warships were only the tool. What humanity had been hiding, for 6,000 years, in the dark at the edge of its maps, was a promise. That the strong would not always be allowed to take. That there was something older and kinder than every empire, and that a young, tired, faithful species had been keeping it awake just enough to matter, and asleep just enough to be safe, since long before the Orel Concordance had a name. And behind Edrin Cole, one by one, the deep keel settled back into their dead moons, and folded their ancient hulls shut, and went back to sleep, to wait, as they had always waited, for the next time the strong forgot themselves and told a free world to kneel. They would be ready. They were always ready. That was the whole of what they were. The story of what happened over Earth did not spread the way the Concordants feared and the humans expected. It spread slowly, which was the only way a true thing ever spread in a galaxy that ran on age and rumor. For the first year, there was only the silence of an armada that had not come home in triumph. 31,000 warships had flown out to claim a region for a breeding reserve, and they had come back disarmed and quiet, and led by a speaker who had taken the seal of precedence off his own crest and laid it on a deck and refused to pick it up. That alone was enough to start the galaxy whispering. The Concordants did not lose. The Concordants did not return without the world it went to take. Something had happened out at the edge of the maps, where the latecomer species lived, and no one could say what. Halan Vey told them what. He stood before the great council of the Concordants, the gathering of the eldest minds of 200 conquered peoples, and he did the thing the Deep Keel had said would be harder than any war. He told the truth. He told them the law of precedence was a thief's law. He told them what he had felt when 200 murdered worlds were poured into his skin. He told them that there was a fleet older than every empire in the galaxy, kept asleep by a young species that bowed to them on purpose, and that this fleet did not recognize age and did not reward strength, and woke only to stop the strong from taking, and that the Concordants had pointed 31,000 hulls at a free world and rung it like a bell, and survived only because the thing it woke was kinder than the Concordants had ever been. They called him mad. Exactly as the Deep Keel had promised, they called him broken, tricked, a coward, dressing up a defeat. The young and certain ones rose and demanded a new fleet, a larger one, to go and prove the old strength still held. And Halan Vey, first keeper of his kind, did not argue with them. He simply pointed at the edge of the home system, where one silent dark hull hung asleep against the stars, a warship older than the council, older than the law, older than every empire those elders had ever bowed to. And he said, into the roaring chamber, in a voice gone quiet with certainty, "Wake it. Send your fleet at it, if you do not believe me. It will not kill you. That is the whole of what I am trying to teach you. It will not kill you. It will only show you what I saw, and then you will stand where I stand, and you will lay down the law of taking too, because no one who feels what I felt can ever do anything else." No one woke it. That was the beginning. It took 40 years. It took Halan Vey the rest of his life, and Tessa Run the better part of hers, standing before council after council, saying the same calm, true thing again and again, while they were mocked and dismissed and slandered, never raising a fleet, never taking a world, bowing their heads and enduring the way the humans had taught them, until the slander wore thin, and the truth wore through, and the first young Concordance commander, born after the fleet came home, stood up in a council chamber and said the words that ended the old law forever: "I do not want to be the empire that takes." Halan Vey did not live to hear it. He died old and gray and at peace, a keeper to the last, with the human keeper's inheritance written above his rest in the script of his own people. We will not be the oldest thing that takes. We will be the oldest thing that stays awake, so the taking can stop. He never saw the end of the war he started with words. No keeper ever does. That was the watch, and he had kept it well. On Earth, the change was quieter, and in some ways larger. Edrin Cole carried home what the Deep Keel had shown him inside the ancient hull, and for the first time in 6,000 years, humanity learned what it had truly been keeping. The keepers had always taught the watch as a burden, a secret to be endured, a strength to be hidden out of fear. Cole taught it differently. He gathered the keepers, the small and unthanked line of his people, who had carried the secret across 60 centuries, and he told them the truth he had wept over on the warm-grown deck of a warship older than every empire in the galaxy. It was not a burden. It was a gift. It was the last love of a dead people, trusted to humanity above every species that had ever found it, precisely because humanity had never wanted to use it. The reluctance was not weakness. The reluctance was the reason. The shaking hands were the safe hands. For 6,000 years, a young, tired species had been begging to never have to wake the most terrible fleet in existence. And that begging, that reluctance, that refusal to reach for the oldest guns in the galaxy, even when 31,000 hulls demanded surrender, that was the truest strength any people had ever shown, and the Deep Keel had seen it, and trusted it, and now, at last, grown it. The watch had a second keeper. The loneliness was over. In the years that followed, the two keeper peoples found each other slowly, carefully, the way two species who had nearly destroyed each other must. Human keepers traveled to the Concordance and taught the old conquerors how the watch was kept, how to stay small, how to wait, how to bow without breaking, how to hold a terrible thing asleep without ever once being tempted to use it. Concordance keepers came to Earth and learned the inheritance, and stood the silent watch over moons full of sleeping warships at the edge of human space. And the Deep Keel, asleep in their dead casings, were guarded now not by one tired species but by two, one young and one ancient, both remade by the same hour over the same blue world, both carrying the same promise made by a people 100,000 years dead. The galaxy, in time, learned a version of the story. It learned that the latecomer species, the small ones, the tithe payers, had been hiding something out at the edge of the maps. It learned that when the largest fleet of the age came to make Earth kneel, humanity revealed what it had been hiding, and it was warships older than every empire, and the empire that came to take went home as guardians. The galaxy got the shape of it right, in the end. But it never got the heart of it right, and the keepers preferred it that way. The galaxy thought the lesson was about power. It thought the lesson was that humanity was secretly strong, secretly armed, secretly more dangerous than anyone had guessed. Other empires, hearing the story, grew careful around the human worlds, and quietly abandoned any thought of demanding tribute, and the human colonies grew safer than they had ever been, and the keepers let them think whatever kept the peace. The real lesson was never about power. Edrin Cole knew it, and Halan Vey had died knowing it, and the second keeper people learned it slowly across the generations, and it was this: the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not the strong. It is the strong who have never been told no. The Concordance had never been told no in 11,000 years, because there had never been anything older to tell it, and so it had grown into a thief that called itself an elder. And the cure for that, the only cure, was something older still, not to destroy the thief, but to hold the mirror up, and offer the choice, and make the taker into a keeper. An enemy destroyed is replaced. An enemy remade is gone forever. The dead people who built the Deep Keel had known it. The humans had carried it. The Concordance had learned it. And the watch grew, one remade enemy at a time, slower than empires rose and fell, patient as the warships that slept in the dark. There was a moment, in the third year after the fleet came home, that Edrin Cole would remember for the rest of his life, and it was not a moment of triumph. It was small. It happened in a council chamber of the Concordance, 10,000 light-years from Earth, and Cole was there only because Halan Vey had asked the human keepers to come and witness. A young Concordance commander rose to speak. He was of the certain kind, the kind that had ruled the Empire for 11,000 years, sure of his age and his strength, and his right to take. He had come to the chamber to demand that the council stop listening to its broken speaker and send a fleet to Earth to settle the matter the old way. He had the votes. He had the certainty. He had the whole weight of the law of precedence behind him. And Halan Vey, old and gray and patient, did not argue with him. He only asked one thing. "Before you vote," the old keeper said, "let me show you what I felt. Not tell you, show you. The deep keel gave me a thing I can pass on. Once. To one mind. The way it was given to me. I will give it to you. Here. In front of the council. And then you may vote however you wish. If I am mad, you will know it in a moment, and you may send your fleet. But if I am not mad, you will know that too. Will you let me show you?" The young commander, certain he could not lose, agreed. And Halan Vey reached out, the way the deep keel had taught him in the long quiet hours of the journey home. And he poured a single one of the 200 murdered worlds into the young commander's mind. Just one. The smallest of them. A green world at the far edge of the early concordance, taken for a reserve, its people relocated, its name struck from the charts. The young commander lived it. For the span of a few breaths he was the world, watching the older fleet slide into orbit, hearing the law read down at him from the sky, lowering his guns, and begging, and being taken anyway. And when it ended, he was on the floor of the council chamber, and he was making the sound that no elder is supposed to be able to make, the sound Vey had made on the bridge of his flagship, and he could not stop, and the whole council watched the most certain young commander among them break open over a single world out of 200. He did not vote for the fleet. He never spoke of the old strength again. He became, in time, one of the fiercest keepers the Concordance ever produced, and he carried the green world in his skin for the rest of his life, and he was glad of it, the way Vey had been glad. That was how the war was won. Not in a battle. One mind at a time, one shown truth at a time, one broken certainty at a time, across 40 patient years. The deep keel had been right. You could not destroy the certainty out of a people. You could only let them feel, in their own skin, what their certainty had cost, and trust that no one who truly felt it could ever do anything but lay it down. Edrin Cole watched that young commander break and remake himself on the floor of an alien council chamber, and he understood that he was watching the exact thing the dead had built the deep keel to do, not to win wars, to end the thing inside people that started them. Edrin Cole lived a long life after that, and he trained the keepers who came after him, and he watched the second keeper people grow into the watch until the day came, late in his years, when a human keeper and a concordance keeper stood the watch together over the same dead moon, and neither one thought it strange anymore. And Cole knew the loneliness was truly over, the 6,000-year loneliness, and that his line had not just carried the gift, but enlarged it, and that this was the thing the dead had hoped for when they poured themselves into a fleet and let it drift into the future on the chance that someone, someday, would be worthy of it. The colonies of humanity grew, in those long years, but they did not grow loud. The keepers saw to that. It would have been easy, after the story spread, to let humanity become what the galaxy now feared it secretly was. A power, a threat, a species that had revealed warships older than the empires, and could surely demand whatever it wished. Other young peoples, given such a story, would have raised tribute and drawn borders and begun the slow swelling into an empire of their own. Humanity did not. The keepers would not allow it, and the people understood why, because the people had finally been told what they kept and why they kept it. You do not hold the cure for empire and then become an empire. That was the whole of the watch. You stay small on purpose. You let the galaxy underestimate you on purpose. You keep the most terrible thing in existence asleep, and you guard against the day you might be tempted to wake it for the wrong reason, and the strongest among you are the ones who want it least. Humanity had bowed for 6,000 years, not because it was weak, but because the bowing was the discipline that kept it from becoming the thing it guarded against. And now it taught that discipline to the concordance, and the old conquerors, who had never in 11,000 years been told to want less, learned, slowly, achingly, that wanting less was the hardest and highest thing a powerful people could ever do. He went out one last time, an old man, to the ancient hull he had walked as a younger keeper, and he sat again on the warm-grown deck, in the faint light that came from no lamp, and he told the deep keel that the watch was wider than it had ever been, and that the dead would be proud, and that humanity had kept the promise, and grown it, and would keep it still when he was gone. "We know, keeper," the deep keel said softly, in the warm dark. "We have watched you do it. You found us hungry and young, and you chose to keep instead of take, and you carried us in silence for 6,000 years, and when the largest fleet of the age came to make your world kneel, you begged it to leave rather than reach for us in triumph. And then, when you had to wake us, you used us not to conquer, but to remake, and you grew the watch, and you ended the loneliness that no keeper before you could end. The dead are proud. Edrin Cole, we are proud. Rest now. The watch is in good hands. In two good hands now, where there was only one. That is your doing. Sleep easy, keeper. We will keep watching. We always will." And in the dark at the edge of the human maps, and now at the edge of the concordance maps too, the warships older than every empire in the galaxy slept on in their dead moons, guarded by two peoples who had once nearly destroyed each other and were remade into guardians by the same patient ancient kindness, waiting, as they had always waited, as they would always wait, for the next time the strong forgot themselves and told a free world to kneel. They would wake. They would take the war away, gently. They would hold the mirror up and offer the choice, and make another taker into another keeper, and the watch would grow again, one remade enemy at a time, across the long, slow, patient ages. And the galaxy would go on thinking the lesson was about power. The keepers knew better. The lesson was about what you do with the oldest thing in the room. You can use it to take, or you can stay awake, and stay small, and keep it asleep, and remake the takers into guardians, and let the galaxy underestimate you forever, and call that the highest honor there is. Humanity had hidden warships older than the empires, but what it had really been keeping, all along, in the dark, in silence, for 6,000 faithful years, was a promise that the strong would not always be allowed to win. And that promise had never been broken. It never would be. That was the whole of what humanity was, and the keepers would not have traded it for every throne in the galaxy. The moons closed. The hulls slept. The watch went on. And the dark at the edge of the maps was, for the first time in 100,000 years, not lonely at all.